Benny Andersson's story is often told through the lens of ABBA's global fame, but his life before and after the band is just as layered as the music he helped create. Born in Stockholm on 16 December 1946, Benny grew up in a household where music was never far away, and that early exposure would shape everything that followed. His name would eventually become synonymous with timeless pop songwriting, but his journey began in a modest, working-class environment where creativity was encouraged, but success was never guaranteed. Over decades, he became one of the most influential composers in modern pop history, yet his personal life often unfolded away from the spotlight. Even at the height of ABBA's fame, Benny preferred privacy, letting the music speak for him. What fans saw was glitter, choreography, and chart success, but behind it was a man navigating relationships, creative pressure, and emotional change. This is the story of how a quiet Swedish boy became a global music architect, and how his life outside the stage shaped the songs that continue to define generations. Childhood influences and the making of a musician. Benny Andersson's early years were deeply shaped by family tradition and musical curiosity. His father and grandfather both played the accordion, and when Benny was just 6 years old, he received his own instrument, marking the beginning of a lifelong relationship with music. Swedish folk traditions and Schlager music filled his surroundings, but his curiosity pushed him far beyond them. He listened eagerly to international records, absorbing everything from Elvis Presley to European pop influences. One of his early fascinations was how rhythm and melody could tell a story without words, and this would later become a defining feature of his songwriting style. By the age of 10, he had moved on to piano, teaching himself with remarkable dedication. School held little interest for him, and by his mid-teens he was already performing in youth clubs. Music quickly became not just a passion but an identity. These formative experiences created a foundation that blended discipline with instinct, allowing him to later merge folk tradition with modern pop structures in a way that felt both natural and revolutionary. First bands and the rise of a young performer as Benny entered his late teens, his musical path became more professional and focused. He joined local groups where he could experiment with sound and performance, eventually becoming part of the Stars, one of Sweden's most popular pop bands in the 1960s. As the group's keyboardist, Benny quickly stood out not just as a performer but as a creative force. While the band initially relied on covers of international hits, he soon began writing original material that helped define their identity. Songs like No Response and Sunny Girl demonstrated his growing confidence as a composer. The Stars' popularity turned Benny into something of a teen idol in Sweden, but more importantly, it gave him the experience of working in professional music production. During this period, he also began collaborating with other musicians and songwriters, learning how arrangement and melody could be shaped for mass appeal. This phase of his life was crucial because it transformed him from a talented amateur into a disciplined professional, preparing him for the collaborations that would eventually change his life and global pop music history. Meeting Bjorn and the path toward ABBA. A turning point in Benny Andersson's life came in the mid-1960s when he met Bjorn Ulvaeus. Their partnership began as a songwriting collaboration, but quickly evolved into something far more significant. The two discovered a shared musical understanding that blended Benny's melodic instincts with Bjorn's lyrical sensibility. Their first compositions showed promise, but it was their ability to adapt and experiment that set them apart. Around the same time, both men became romantically involved with female singers, Benny with Anni-Frid Lyngstad and Bjorn with Agnetha Fältskog. These relationships would later become central to ABBA's identity. The four often worked together informally before any official group existed, singing on recordings and supporting each other's projects. Their chemistry was both personal and musical, creating a rare dynamic where love and creativity intersected. What began as collaboration soon evolved into something more structured, as they realized the potential of combining their voices, writing, and production into a unified musical act. Without any formal plan, the foundations of ABBA were slowly taking shape through shared studio sessions and growing artistic trust. The formation of ABBA and early struggles. By the early 1970s, the informal collaboration between the four musicians solidified into a group initially known by a long combined name using their initials. Eventually, this was shortened to ABBA, a name that would become one of the most recognizable in music history. Early attempts at success were not immediate. Their entry into Swedish music competitions brought mixed results, and initial singles struggled to achieve international impact. However, their persistence paid off as they refined their sound, blending catchy pop melodies with layered harmonies and polished production. The group's early work reflected experimentation and adaptation, learning how to appeal to broader audiences while maintaining artistic identity. During this period, they also developed their visual style, which combined glamour with accessibility. The iconic mirrored logo and coordinated costumes became part of their identity. Though they were still relatively unknown outside Scandinavia, the foundation for global success was being carefully constructed. These early years were essential in shaping ABBA's discipline, sound, and image, turning them from a local Swedish act into a group ready for international breakthrough. Eurovision victory and global recognition. ABBA's defining breakthrough came in 1974, when they entered the Eurovision Song Contest with Waterloo. Unlike their earlier entries, this performance captured immediate attention with its energetic style, glam rock influence, and English lyrics. Their victory marked a turning point not only for the group but also for Swedish pop music on the global stage. Waterloo quickly climbed international charts, reaching audiences far beyond Europe and introducing ABBA's sound to the world. The success was not accidental. It was the result of years of collaboration, experimentation, and refining their musical identity. Following Eurovision, ABBA began receiving invitations to perform across Europe and beyond, gradually building an international fan base. However, success was still uneven, and not every release immediately topped charts. Despite this, the group's persistence and evolving sound ensured that each new single gained more attention than the last. Eurovision did not just win them a trophy, it established their credibility and opened doors to global touring, recording contracts, and media exposure that would soon turn them into one of the biggest pop acts of the decade. Peak fame, global tours, and iconic hits. Following their Eurovision success, ABBA entered a period of extraordinary global popularity. Throughout the mid to late 1970s, they released a series of hit songs that became defining tracks of the era. Songs like Mamma Mia, SOS, and Dancing Queen showcased their ability to blend emotional depth with irresistible pop melodies. Their albums topped charts across Europe, Australia, and eventually the United States, cementing their status as international superstars. Tours during this period attracted massive crowds, and their performances became known for their energy, precision, and visual spectacle. ABBA's music also benefited from the growing influence of television and global media, allowing their songs to reach audiences instantly. Despite their success, the pressure of constant touring and recording schedules began to take a toll on the group members personally. Still, their creative output remained strong, and they continued producing albums that expanded their sound. This era represented the peak of ABBA's influence, where their music defined pop culture and their image became instantly recognizable worldwide. Love, marriage, and emotional strain within the band behind ABBA's polished image were two romantic relationships that shaped much of the group's emotional landscape. Benny Andersson and Annie Frid Lyngstad, along with Björn Ulvaeus and Agnetha Fältskog, were both couples before and during the band's rise. Initially, these relationships added warmth and authenticity to their music, as audiences connected with the idea that real couples were performing love songs together. However, the pressures of fame, constant travel, and creative demands eventually strained both marriages. Björn and Agnetha divorced in 1979, followed by Benny and Frida in the early 1980s. These separations were deeply emotional and inevitably influenced the tone of their later music, which became more reflective and introspective. Despite the personal challenges, the group continued working together professionally, demonstrating remarkable discipline. Songs from this period often carried themes of separation, change, and emotional complexity, though the members frequently denied direct autobiographical intent. Still, the emotional reality behind the music was impossible to ignore, and it added a layer of depth that resonated strongly with listeners around the world. The decline, final recordings, and ABBA's quiet ending. By the early 1980s, ABBA's creative momentum began to slow. While they continued releasing successful songs, internal dynamics and personal changes affected their collaboration. Recording sessions became more challenging, and the sense of effortless creativity that had defined their earlier years began to fade. Their final studio work included songs that reflected maturity and emotional distance, signaling a natural evolution in their sound. Eventually, the group decided to take a break, which effectively became an indefinite hiatus. Their final performances and promotional appearances marked the end of an era, even though no formal announcement of breakup was made at the time. Fans around the world were left with uncertainty, but the music remained widely celebrated. Unlike many bands, ABBA did not end with conflict or public dispute, but rather a quiet separation shaped by life changes and shifting priorities. This subtle ending contributed to their lasting mystique, allowing their legacy to remain intact and their music to continue growing in popularity long after they stopped performing together. Life after ABBA and creative reinvention. After ABBA, Benny Andersson and Björn Ulvaeus continued their creative partnership, focusing on new musical projects. One of their most significant achievements was the stage musical Chess, which demonstrated their ability to adapt pop sensibilities into theatrical storytelling. They also contributed to other productions and continued composing music that extended beyond pop formats. Meanwhile, ABBA's individual members pursued separate lives, with varying degrees of public engagement. Benny maintained a strong connection to music, forming bands and working on orchestral and folk-inspired projects in Sweden. His career after ABBA showed that his creativity was not limited to the pop group format but extended into broader musical exploration. Over time, interest in ABBA's music revived significantly, leading to renewed global appreciation and stage adaptations such as Mamma Mia! These developments kept their legacy alive and introduced their music to new generations. Benny's post-ABBA life demonstrated continuity rather than disappearance, as he remained an active and respected figure in the music world. Lasting cultural impact and the sound that still shapes generations. ABBA's influence did not end with their final recordings. In many ways, it expanded long after they stopped performing together. Their music has become a permanent fixture in global pop culture, studied, reinterpreted, and rediscovered by new generations who were not even born during their peak years. What makes their legacy unusual is how modern their sound still feels, despite originating in the 1970s and early 1980s. Their production techniques, layered harmonies, and emotional clarity in songwriting helped set standards that many later pop artists would adopt. Songs like Dancing Queen, The Winner Takes It All, and Gimme, Gimme, Gimme continue to appear in films, advertisements, and stage productions, reinforcing their relevance across decades. Beyond nostalgia, ABBA's music has been recontextualized in contemporary pop, influencing artists who value strong melodic structure and emotional storytelling. The success of theatrical adaptations like Mamma Mia! Dawn before Hasset also proved that their songs could function as narrative tools, not just standalone hits. Even technological innovations such as digital concerts have extended their reach, showing how legacy acts can evolve with modern audiences. Benny Andersson's role in this enduring impact is central, as his compositions provided the foundation for ABBA's timeless appeal. Ultimately, their cultural footprint is not confined to one era but continues to expand, making them one of the rare groups whose music feels continuously alive rather than archived in history. Reunion, Voyage, and the enduring legacy of ABBA. Decades after their separation, ABBA surprised the world by reuniting to record new music, eventually releasing the album Voyage. The project marked a rare moment in pop history, bringing together all four members after more than 40 years. The reunion was not driven by commercial pressure alone but by a shared sense of closure and artistic curiosity. Alongside the album, they introduced a digital concert experience featuring virtual versions of their younger selves, blending nostalgia with modern technology. This allowed audiences to experience ABBA performances in a completely new format while preserving their classic image. The project received widespread acclaim and demonstrated the timeless appeal of their music. Public appearances by Benny Andersson and his former bandmates highlighted the enduring respect between them despite past personal challenges. Today, ABBA's legacy continues through stage productions, recordings, and live experiences that attract audiences across generations. Their story is ultimately one of creativity, transformation, and resilience, proving that music can outlast personal change and remain culturally powerful across decades.